Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Discover New Worlds with Ryan D. Meier. Today I'm joined by Katharine Wibell, a young adult and epic fantasy author. She's coming at us with her Mummy straight from New Orleans. We have a great conversation where we dive into her books and mythology and kind of how she weaves those two together. It's fascinating, especially if Norse mythology is something you're into. So please check it out, and we'll see you afterwards. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. And I'm so excited to be joined by Katharine E. Wibell this morning. Katharine, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you.
I'm
If you don't
excited
mind,
to be here.
yeah, take a few minutes and introduce yourself and maybe a little bit about your writing.
Okay, well, again, like you said, my name is Katharine E. Wibell, and I am a writer of several different high fantasy series, and they range in a variety of age brackets. So my first one, my debut series, is called the Incarn Saga. It's a new adult shifter fantasy based in a kingdom where humans and Therimorphs, which are the shifters, begrudgingly live side by side, and they have to put their differences aside in order to fend off a third party. But that's a 4-book series. It's out now. And currently, I'm actually working on 2 different series. One is my young adults called The Jed Chronicles. The first book is The 12 Tasks. And that one's high adventure. It deals with a multiverse chock full of all sorts of mythological creatures. So if you like dragons, you'll find it there. If you like fae, you'll find it there. Witches, you'll find it in there. It's a lot of fun. But my newest series that I've been releasing is actually an adult novella series called The Guardian Speaker, and they're released kind of like a serial. So every few months, I'm trying to put one out. So they're small, snappy books, but they're heavily based in Norse mythology. But they're dark, gritty, as you can kind of expect if anybody knows anything about Norse mythology. It's not the most cheery of mythos.
No, definitely not. And do we see any of the high profile mythological characters float through?
Interestingly enough, I'm trying to go with the obscure first, and then I kind of build upon that. So I slowly reveal all the worlds of Yggdrasil, the world tree, but it really starts with Midgard and actually bases around the concept that in the era of the Vikings, people in the Norse believed there were 4 parts of self. There was the body, there's the mind and soul, there's your luck that's passed through lineage, and then you have your animal guardian spirits, which are called your Fujia. And so everyone has a Fujia, and the animal form they take kind of connects with your core personality traits. So that's kind of what I focus on initially, but I build outwards, and readers will get to experience all 9 realms. And yes, you will glimpse a Thor, a Loki down the line, but it'll be way, way, way down the line because I'm not actually focusing on the gods.
That's super cool to me because it's more of, because when we think of Norse mythology, we always are going to default to Thor and Loki, right? Like that's just the first thing that pops into my head. So I think it's really neat that you're focusing on some of these other main characters, and it'll almost be like cameos when you get to the Thor and the Loki. It'll be like, hey, look. So that's really neat. Yeah, that's super cool. Now, writing based on mythology, I would imagine, comes with its own challenges, because I think similarly to when we're trying to reinvent fairy tales or borrow things from something that's so established, how do you find a balance between using what you know of mythology and kind of being able to twist it into something that you make yours? How do you find that balance?
Well, I mean, for me, it really depends, again, how close I want to keep to the oldness. So my other series, I can be a little more loose and a little play a little bit on how I want to describe things or what twists I want to do from the standard archetype. But with my Nordic series, The Guardian Speaker, I am trying to keep as true to the old myth as possible. I have bookshelves lined with all their old sagas and the Eddas, and I have books also that are the historical aspects of the Vikings, because I do try to keep it true to, the materials they wore, how their houses were structured, their day-to-day lives. So I want to bring that richness to their society as well as to the mythos back to current. But the challenge is, with the Nordic myth especially, is what people don't understand. Norse mythology wasn't one single religion. each country that we perceive today, and they had even sub brackets, but they all had their own set of myths. A lot of them overlapped, but not always. Some contradict each other. So as I'm going through and trying to decide, do I want this story, or how do I compare it to this story, or this description doesn't exactly set because they're total opposites. For instance, the Jotuns, or the giants, some describe them as very, very beautiful. Others, they're very ugly. Some are small, others are huge. So there's not really a good basis on how I can create them. So it's been kind of that has been a challenge, trying to figure out how to select yet keep true to everything that I'm reading.
To me, that seems like there's so much of that out there, especially now with, the popularity in the Marvel series with Thor and Loki. And Loki, is in full swing right now. You see it everywhere. So yeah, that I would imagine there's so much out there, it can feel overwhelming. And you kind of answered a question I had, which is, do you take liberties with some of this mythology as your story needs? And I guess the answer to that is some true and some not. So the ambiguity is kind of where your gray area is. Would you say that?
Yes, like I said, if there is a specific kind of description or a phrasing that implies a characteristic a certain way, I'll try to keep as true as I can to that. But there are a lot of areas where they don't have specific descriptions for the three races of elves, since they have many consider three, some consider there's only two races of elves and dwarves, some overlap. So I'm actually going to separate them all and have three races of elves and the dwarves as their separate entities. But then I had to figure out, how do I want to describe the Yosafar, which are the light elves? How do I describe the dark elves versus the black elves, and figure out what their realms look like and how their society functions differently.
Oh,
so there is a little bit of liberties.
Yeah, for sure. And especially I'm a big elves guy. It's always been my favorite mythical race. I write about them. I just love them. And what I like about them is in worlds where there's not just one or two. I like the myriad of elves, and it gives you freedom to do, like you said, you can form cultural things, the different descriptions. I think that's really fascinating. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's every time I feel like I have everything organized, and I'll find a new script somewhere or a new text. And then I'm like, oh, wait, no, they have sub-factions and they're called this or this or this. And now I have to figure out how to incorporate that and still keep true with my story. Because I do want to touch on the whole plethora of everything that exists within Nordic mythology. Most people, again, focus on the gods and the giants. And maybe remember, yes, there are dwarves and elves and everything else, but they kind of forget the whole gamut, that there's so many things that exist within this cosmos.
Yeah, and it's vast. You could probably spend the rest of your life creating stories here and there throughout the universe, for sure.
Oh,
now,
yes.
I'm just, before we let go of the Greek mythology thing, I want you to, so you said that they believe, or part of the lore is 5 different things, right? The mind, the body, and the soul. Now, luck, you mentioned, that's genetic in that system. They believe it's handed down through your lineage.
Yes, what they perceive as luck is some kind of all-female entity, invisible, that's always around, but it does cling throughout your bloodlines. So luck can be passed to and from people in your bloodline, but can't be passed to someone who's maybe married in, and that actually does cause problems in one of my books, because someone needs some more luck and is having issues with it. And also, one of the big questions I have is what happens when luck runs out? Because without luck, bad things can happen. You can have accidents, you could be subject to disease. And so one of the big premise is there's something affecting every person's luck, draining it and killing these entities. And without them, humanity is at the brink of destruction, because without that part of self, they won't exist.
Well, I'm going to take the simple approach and just blame my parents for all of
there
my
you go.
I think that's
you
just...
gave me bad luck. Why?
And I guess really it's not even their fault, really, right? So I could go to the next level and blame my grandparents. So at least I know it's not me, that Lady Luck is not following me around.
Very true.
And now the fifth thing, because I was unfamiliar with this, is the animal spirit. What did you refer to it as?
They're called Fujia.
Okay, now does this play into the shifting portion of your writing at all, or is this just like an animal familiar sort of thing?
They're more like an animal familiar. I mean, think of like in a lot of Christianity, you think of a guardian angel. Well,
Sure.
theirs are guardian animals. They're again, they're invisible to the naked eye unless you have a seeress or something that can communicate with the spirit realm. They're all female again, these entities, and each you're born with one, and whatever form it is, again, affects your core premise. Some of them are a wolf means you're a good warrior. A bear means you have royal blood in you. My main characters is actually a squirrel. So she's a very quiet and meek and invisible because she was born with the ability to see everyone's Fujia. So in public eye, everybody thinks she's crazy because she talks to herself, but she's not really talking to herself. She's talking with her animal spirit, which she's called Trey. And so they communicate, but she is a very quiet personality in the beginning because in her society, she's often shunned.
Fascinating. Okay, that's why I was wondering if the squirrel had something unique towards it, or like you said, it's more of maybe something that's a bad thing for her, at least to society.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, society can't see what form it is. She can see it's a squirrel, but
yes,
at least, compared to some of her siblings, one has this falcon, the other one has this big wolfhound, these big fierce animals, and she has a squirrel. But then again, she's very meek, and so it represents her in the beginning very well, and you find out later on, even the smallest of things can have a big punch later.
That's so cool. So speaking of really, really badass fantasy things, I noticed that you have, through your website, you share a story about your background in archery, which I think is probably like one of the coolest things a fantasy author could do, because a lot of us, now I've shot bows when I was a little bit younger, but not really as an adult, in my adult years. Maybe when I was a teenager was the last time. And then I find when I write about it, I need to go find resources, right? Because the muscle memory, I just don't recall the exact feeling and some of that stuff. So why don't you tell us about that experience, but also how you've been able to work that into your writing?
Well, interestingly, it's the opposite way. When I was really little, my sister and I developed these alter egos, and we invented all different worlds and characters that we would travel across. That has since now turned into my young adult series, the 12 Tasks, the Jed Chronicles. So I'm actually now writing that alter ego of myself and her stories. But when I was developing her, she had certain items that she utilized, one of which was a bow and arrow. So I always kept saying I wanted to learn all these things. And thankfully, growing up kind of in the countryside of Georgia, we had the 4-H club, and they offered an archery option. And so I kind of signed up and found out that I was halfway decent at it for a long time. So that kind of gave me a boost. But now, kind of utilizing that, having shot for all those years, I'm able now to take that knowledge, like you said, and reincorporate it in my writing. So it's kind of this ebb and flow. I had a character, I wanted to be her, and then now I can actually write her because I kind of was part of her life for a moment.
Now, for the authors out there, are there things that are just, you find that people write about archery that are just like completely untrue, like completely impossible?
Well, thankfully I haven't noticed too many issues when I'm reading, but when I watch like shows, like visual things, I can totally tell you right off the bat, that is not how you shoot a bow. That is not the correct form. And you'll see, I won't say which Marvel characters or Lord of the Rings characters that shoot the bow all wrong. And I'm just like biting my nails, like, oh no, that's not correct. Poor form.
I knew that at some point you were going to have come across archery that's just made so poorly. So movies, I guess that makes the most sense, because that's what we did forever with all weaponry, really, right? We make it seem like it's you can fly through the airs with the guns, the dual guns,
Oh
and
yeah.
fire accurately, all that. Yeah. So I guess it's not a surprise to see that in movies. And before we get to letting you go, I also noticed that you're an artist beyond just your writing, right? So why don't you share some of that with us? I find that writing, and maybe a lot of people agree or maybe they don't, is as connected to the other arts as any of them. So tell us a little bit about some of the other projects that you work on.
Okay, well, outside, like you said, I'm very artistic and multifacets. Outside of my writing and literary works, I am a reverse glass painter. And reverse glass is a style of painting where you use glass as your canvas and you work almost in a mirror image form. You take an object, let's say I do a lot of pet portraiture. So someone gives me a picture of a pet, I kind of have to flip it around to be the mirror image of itself. And then I start painting that image on the glass in layers, starting with whatever would be the closest to you. So the shine of the eye, the details, working in layers all the way backwards until you fill the background in a solid whatever color, let those layers dry, and then you flip the piece around and all of a sudden you reveal what your final painting will look like. So for me, it's a big guessing game, but it's a bizarre style of art, but I enjoy it. I think I like this challenge. My mom, I think, once said, my mind's kind of wired backwards because I can do that process. But it is definitely interesting. If you don't know about it, check it out. There are a lot of people who do reverse glass. I focus on all different kind of animals in mine.
Would you and if I'm putting you on the spot, I'm sorry, but if you
Oh.
wanted to send do you do any fantasy related art?
At this moment, I predominantly stuck with no, I predominantly stick with local wildlife. People
Okay.
do give me lots of pets. I do, because I'm living currently in New Orleans. I have a bunch of series where I have squirrels running through trees, grabbing Mardi Gras beads, stuff like that. But no, I have not branched into fantasy animals yet.
Okay, cool. Well, if you'd like to, because I know reverse glass painting is something that was certainly new to me and likely new to some of the audience. If you have something that you'd like to share, I'd love to put it out with the video, just the show. It's completely up to you, but you're welcome to send any of that over for some showcasing.
Okay.
So, all right, before we wrap up, and everybody, as always, I'll make sure to put all of Katharine's contact information up on the screen after we're done. But Katharine, why don't you tell everybody where we can find us and anything else you wanted to share with the audience?
Well, you can find me on my website, and that's www.katharineWibellBooks.com. And I'll spell out my name because it is an unusual name. Sorry about this. But Katharine is Katharine. And my last name is spelled W, I as in ink, B as in boy, ELL. So that's KatharineWibellBooks.com. And you can check out me there and see all my writing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a blast, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. Best of luck.
Thank you. I love this.
Thank you. And everybody stay tuned and have a great night. Thank you. A big thanks to Katharine Wibell for coming on the program today. I had a blast having her on. I think we talked about a lot of really neat mythology things. I learned some new stuff. I hope you did too. So make sure you get out there, check her work out on Amazon, and we'll talk to you soon. Until then, get out there and discover new worlds.